Shalom, shalom. This is Yael Ezra Ben Levi, and I want to make this video addressing a question that I want to ask only to those within Christianity, Messianic, Jewish roots, Messianic, Israelites, only those that believe that Jesus, Yahabashai, Yeshua, Yahoshua, whatever name you identify him as, only those that believe he is God in the flesh. And here's my question. Only to those that believe that the Messiah of the New Testament is indeed God himself, God in the flesh. Here's the question. Did he know or believe that he was indeed God himself? And I'm asking this based off of some of the discrepancies that we see within the New Testament writings by his own words, by his own testimony. So I wrote down a series verses from the Gospels, mainly coming from the book of John, because that's where most people go when they want to pull verses that they believe can be used to speak of the divinity of Jesus being indeed God himself. So let's start. I want to start with a real popular one that many people use. Let's go to the Gospel of John chapter 8, and let us start at verse 54. I will be reading from the King James Version of the Bible. So let us begin. Jesus answered, if I honor myself, my honor is nothing. It is my Father that honoreth me, of whom you say that he is your God. Yet ye have not known him, but I know him. And if I should say I know him not, I shall be a liar like unto you. But I know him and keep his saying. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. Then said the Jews unto him, Thou art not yet 50 years old, and hast thou seen Abraham? Key verse right here. Jesus said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am. So many people say when Jesus declared the words, I am, he was indeed identifying with the words I am as revealed to Moses. When the Creator, when the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob said, I am that I am, tell the people, I am has sent me. So they take that as a declaration that there it is, without a shadow of a doubt, he declared that he is God himself. Yet within his whole statements, he makes a distinction between the Father and himself. But I want to go to this verse to identify with what I think he actually was saying. It's just a thought, something that you could ponder yourself. But let's go to the book of the prophet Isaiah, chapter 63. I will be starting at verse 16. the book of the prophet Isaiah, chapter 63. I will only read one verse. And then I will tie this back into what Jesus said in the Gospel of John. But he said, before Abraham was, I am. Hallelujah. Isaiah chapter 63, verse 16. Doubtless thou art our father, though Abraham be ignorant of us, and Israel acknowledge us not. Thou, O Yahweh, art our father, our Redeemer. Thy name is from everlasting. Let me read it again because I want to see if you caught this. Doubtless thou art our father, though Abraham be ignorant of us, and Israel acknowledge us not. Thou, O Yahweh, art our father, our Redeemer. Thy name is from everlasting. Now, let's go back to the Gospel of John, chapter 8, and just look at verse 56, and then we're going to go down to 56 through 58. No, let's go to 53. I'm sorry. Let's go to 53 to see what the Jews had to say to Jesus. Art thou greater than our father Abraham, which is dead, and the prophets are dead? Thou makest thou thyself. And Jesus said, if I honor myself, my honor is nothing. It is my Father that honoreth me, of whom ye say that he is your God. Now he's right down 56. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. 57. Then said the Jews unto him, thou art not yet 50 years old, hast thou seen Abraham? Now you have to understand this was being sarcastic, because even if Jesus was 50 or over 50, he still would not have seen Abraham. But here's what Jesus said, Jesus said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am. I believe that this is really referring back to Isaiah chapter 63 and 16. Because before Abraham was your father, before Isaac is your father, before Jacob or any of that, Yahweh is Israel's true father. So I simply believe when Jesus said, I am, he was simply letting the Jews know. You could call Abraham your father all you want, but before Abraham was, or before Abraham existed, Yah was your father. Yah is your father, not Abraham. Yah is. He is the creator of all beings. Now that's what I take it to mean. And I believe he said the name of God. That's just my opinion. I believe he said God's name. And at that time, it was a prohibition against saying the name, and they took up stones to stone. And if he did say, Yahweh, Ahayah, they were upset that he said the name of God, or was referring to God. I believe he said his name. I do not believe he was saying, I am. I believe he was saying, before, you can say Abraham was your father all you want, but before Abraham was your father, Yah is your father. That's what I take that to mean. But even if we looking at what Jesus said here, we see that he makes a distinction between himself and the Father. So I do not believe he believed he was God himself, based off his own statements. You cannot act like he did not say the other words to isolate one verse, and then to look at the reactions of the Jews and say, oh, right there, that proves it. That doesn't prove anything. That only proves they was upset and they wanted to stone him. And plus, I love how when I was a Christian, people used to say you can't trust what the Jews say. The Jews are liars. But when they could glean from something that the Jews say to prove their point, they will run to and echo it. But other than that, you can't trust them. You can't trust what they say because they're deceitful and all this. You can't trust them unless they say something that agrees with your opinion. So I do not believe when Jesus, Yeshua, Yahushua, whatever you want to call him, said before Abraham was, I am. I do not believe he was referring to himself. And even if he was, he still makes several distinctions between himself and the Father. So let's go and look at some other verses. Remember, the title of this video is To Those Who Believe That Jesus is God. The question to you is, did Jesus himself embrace the belief that you have about him? Did he see himself as God? And even more, did he even know he was God if he was God? Because if you look at some of the things I'm going to share with you, when you read the Gospels, it seems at times that he do not hold to the opinion that many have about him. So let's look at some more verses. Let us look at John chapter 7. The Gospel of John chapter 7, verse 16 and 17. Jesus answered them and said, My doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me. If any man will do his will, he will know of the doctrine, whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself. So once again, we can see by the very words of Jesus, and if you have a Bible that have the words in red, the words in red are supposed to be the words of Jesus. We can see by Jesus' own words, once again, he makes a very distinction between himself and God, himself and the Father. He said, the words I have, they're not mine. They belong to him who sent me. So once again, we see he is making a distinction between himself and the one who sent him, who was God, based on what it says in the Gospels. Let's look at let's look at the Gospel of John chapter 10 and verse 30. This is another verse that many people run to say this proves that Jesus declared he was God. This is the Gospel of John chapter 10, and this is where a healing was just done. He opened the eyes of a blind man. I'm going to go ahead and start at verse 25, and I'm going to stop at verse 30. Jesus answered them, I told you, and ye believe not. The works that I do in my Father's name, they bear witness of me. But ye believe not, because ye are not of my sheep. As I said unto you, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. And I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish, neither shall any man pluck them out of my hand. My Father, which gave them me, is greater than all, and no man is able to pluck them out of my Father's hands. I and my Father are one. Right there, meaning people that believe that Jesus is God, like they would shut the Bible and say that right there proves it right out of his own mouth. He said that he is God without a shadow of a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt, that is not what he said. He simply said that I and the Father is one. I am one with my Father because I agree with what he says of himself, and I agree that his Torah is right. I agree with him. We are on one accord. That do not mean that I am him. But for some reason, we will make those words mean that for Jesus. And we see even in the Gospel of John, Jesus is praying and he said, make my disciples one as you and I are one. So why aren't the disciples now God? If Jesus said the same way that me and the Father is one, he is praying that God, that his Father will make the disciples one, just like he is one with them. So why aren't they divine? Why aren't they seen as gods? Based off the same language that Jesus used earlier. He says it again, referring to the whole of his disciples as being one, just like he is. So we can plainly see he is not saying that his disciples are gods. He is simply saying to be on one accord. That is my take. That's my opinion. I have the right to it. And I know many of you will beg to differ, but, you know, I'm just sharing my opinion at this time. Let's go to the Gospel of John, chapter 19. And I'm saying in the Gospel of John because that is the gospel that many people go to when they want to prove the divinity of Jesus. John chapter 19, verse 30. When Jesus therefore had received the vinegar, he said, "It is finished." And he bowed his head and gave up the ghost. This is where Jesus died on the cross. Now, this is the take I have always had when I came out of Christianity. It was because God is eternal. God cannot die. So if you're saying that Jesus is, without a shout, God himself, how can God die? And when God died on the cross, and I heard many people say God died on the cross. So if the eternal God died on the cross, then he is not much of an eternal one, and therefore he cannot be God. And when he gave up his spirit, what spirit did he give up? I have many people that's of a understanding of a Trinity or a triune being, that the man gave up the God that was in him. So is the man that had God in him separate from the God that was in him? Or are they one? Then they try to say, no, you can't separate them, they're one. So when God died, God gave up his own spirit and died. So you got to say, I know it sounds confusing, but when they try to explain this, even when I used to try to explain what I believe, it becomes difficult at times to explain it. So it was either that the man Jesus was God himself, or that the man Jesus was the Son of God made flesh, who is still God, or that God dwelled in this human casing, this human vessel known as Jesus, and that God departed him, and that is why he died. Now let's go to John. We're going to stay in John. Let's look at John chapter 20 and verse 17. Now this is, to me, one of the biggest issues to look at, because I do not believe without a shadow of a doubt Jesus did not see himself as God. He did not even believe that he was God. Let's look at the very words of Jesus in the Gospel of John chapter 20 and verse 17. Jesus answered and said unto her, this is after he resurrected, and it says, Jesus said unto her, touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God. So based off the very testimony of Jesus himself, he has a God to go to. So if you're saying that Jesus is God, who is this God that your God is going to? Who is this Father that God is returning to? And he says this same Father and God that I have is the same one that you have. So once again, we see Jesus making a distinction between who he is and who the Creator is. Yet many, and even myself at one time, believe that Jesus was himself God in the flesh. But based off Jesus' own words, I do not believe he holds to the concept that he is God as many that believe this. Let us read it again. Jesus said unto her, touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. So now you have to ask yourself the question, what God is your God talking about that he's returning to? How many gods are there? Just think about that. That is the Gospel of John chapter 20 verse 17, which I think is a very powerful verse for someone to truly study out this concept. Is Jesus God, or did Jesus even believe that he was God? And why do someone believe this after reading Jesus' own testimony? There's another part in the gospel where Jesus said he do not even know his own return, but he's going to return again, as within Christian theology, that he's going to return again. He said he does not know the day. The angels don't know. Only the Father knows. So if he is the Father, him and the Father is one, why do he not know his own returning? And we say that the Son is equally all-knowing, like the Father is all-knowing. Yet, Jesus says he does not know his own returning. So how can they be one? If the Father knows, surely the Son will know, because we have these man-made church creeds that say the Father is all-knowing, the Son is all-knowing, the Holy Spirit is all-knowing. Yet Jesus himself says he doesn't know. That is problematic indeed for those that hold to this concept that Jesus, that the Christian Messiah, somehow is God himself. Let's look at, now we're going to leave, no, let's go one more verse in the Gospel of John, then we're going to leave the Gospel of John and go into two more Gospels. Let's look at one of the most famous verses in the New Testament, the Gospel of John, chapter 3, verse 16. It says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." Now we plainly see right here, once again, that Jesus makes the distinction between himself and God. He plainly said, "For God so loved the world that he gave his Son." If he was God, you would think he probably would have said, "For God so loved the world that he gave himself." He doesn't say that. So that's something else to look at again. Why do he always makes a distinction? Why is it so important that we believe Jesus is God when it doesn't even seem that Jesus believes he's God? Let's go to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 27, verse 46. This is Matthew chapter 27, verse 46. This is when he is on the cross. "And about the ninth hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani." That is saying, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" If he is God, who is he crying out to? Who is this God that he feels forsaken by if he is God? Just something to think about. Who is this God that God is crying out to? Something to think about. Let's look at Luke chapter 22. Luke chapter 22. I want to read 40 through 44. And when he was at the place, he said unto them, "Pray that ye enter not into temptation." Verse 41. "And he was withdrawn from them about a stone cast, and he knelt down and prayed." Again, who is the one who you saying is God praying to? Who do God pray to? If Jesus is the Almighty, who is this God that the Almighty is praying to? Let's continue reading. "And saying, Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thou be done." So once again, we see that the one who you say is divine, that the one you say is divinity, the one you say that is God in the flesh, the one that you say is Yah in the flesh, he calls the one he's praying to Father. I mean, you say he's the Father in the flesh. He's God in the flesh. That's who the Father is. The Father is God. Yet we see the one who you saying is God in the flesh. The one that you say is one with the Father, that proves when he made the statement, I and the Father is one, that proves he is God. Why does he pray? And who is he praying to if he is the Almighty? It is the Almighty that answers prayer. So explain how your God is praying to himself and why he won't listen to himself. Because in the Gospel of John, he prays and said, Father, I know you always hear me. Now, he may always hear him, but evidently he must not always answer his requests. Let's keep reading. Verse 43. And therefore appeared an angel unto him from heaven and strengthening him. That's a big problem right there. If Jesus is God and he is all powerful, how can one of his creations strengthen him? What strength did this angel have to strengthen God? Something to think about. Let's on verse 44. And being in an agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was as it were great drops of blood falling down to the ground. So now we see your God being in such great agony, he is praying more earnestly this time. That's still problematic to those that hold on to the concept that this person is God. Now the thing is, like I said, you may believe he's God, but did the one that you believed is God believe and know he was God? Or was he God and he was not aware or privy to the information that he was God? Because that's what it seems like by his own actions and his own words. So there it is. Based on what we see within the Gospels, based off the very words of Jesus himself, it seems that he did not believe he was God. And if he was God, he didn't know he was God, which is even more problematic. So this is my take. I'm no longer a Christian. I do not believe Jesus is God. I do not even believe he is the Messiah. But if you want to believe that he is the Messiah, I believe that is okay if you want to believe he's the Messiah. Just don't believe that he's God. Because God is eternal. God cannot die. No matter how you want to spin it. No matter how you want to say you're putting God in a box. You shouldn't lessen God. God is eternal. God is from everlasting to everlasting. There is no expiration date on God. And it appears from the very words of Jesus. If we're going to say, if you believe the New Testament is true, if you believe the words in red are legitimate, it does not appear that the one that you believe is the Messiah, which I have no issues with. You can believe he's the Messiah. I do not. But when you say that he is God, it seems that he does not believe he's God. And if he was God, he was not privy to this information that he was. So, this is your boy, this is your friend, this is your brother, Yael Ezra Ben Levi, aka Tommy Kurt Todd. And this was my question to you. I want to state it again. Question to those who believe Jesus is God. And it's only to those that believe Jesus is God, because there are many Christians, believe it or not, that do not believe Jesus is God. There are many Messianics that do not believe Jesus is God. There's many Messianic Hebrews that do not believe Jesus is God himself. This is only to those that hold to that ideal that he is, because it appears that Jesus did not believe it, or he was not aware of the fact that he was. So that's all I wanted to ask. This is a long video for my standards, but I just wanted to ask this question and share with you some of the verses. There's many more verses to share, but I just wanted to share these at this time. So shalom, love, and blessings.